Hey, what's up? My name's Cedar George-Parker. I'm from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and Tulalip Tribes, working with Wilderness Committee. And today we're here with Eric Rader, our Wilderness and Water campaigner. And so, yeah, let's get right into details. All right, I heard a pretty funny story about you. Before we get into mining, about talking about park mining and all the mining that's out there screwing things up for everybody, let's talk about how you smashed up a new shiny car, the Wilderness Committee vehicle in Manitoba. What's the deal with this? What happened?
I mean, I didn't smash it. It wasn't my mistake, but I was driving the new Wilderness Committee car, and I was going down to the World Wilderness Congress in South Dakota, and I looked at this storm cloud I was going to drive into, and that storm cloud was a huge hailstorm, and suddenly the windshield is smashed, and the hail is still coming down, and that shiny new vehicle that I got after years and years is now $10,000 damages and getting written off.
So what really happened? No, I'm just kidding.
The good part about that was that I did make it to the World Wilderness Congress.
Oh, nice.
I talked about mining. I talked about First Nations and mining in Manitoba. But at that Congress, they actually passed a resolution to ban mining in Hasepa, which is the Black Hills. Mm-hmm. So that mining piece and people around the world recognizing that mining's having an impact in places that we value. And that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. And then I know that Canada is one of the definitely the epicenters of mining in the world. A lot of mining companies have the headquarters here. And I think it's such a big issue and deal that a lot of people face everywhere. It gets into the water. Mining has a major impact on lands, waters, communities, breaking communities up. I understand you investigate mining operations and proposals, but mostly in provincial parks. So what I kind of heard from talking with you before is they allow mining in Manitoba parks. What's the deal with this? That sounds a little crazy, right? Places we want to protect, but they're like, go ahead, let's ruin it. Give us the 411.
Yeah, that's a question that we get from people all the time. They're kind of stunned, where it's like, there's mining in this park, or this park is at risk. And Manitoba has different classifications for areas of a provincial park. So some of it is protected. It's great. We're going to keep that canoe route, or this area we love to go visit, area that are important for moose. But there's other areas that have been left open by the Manitoba government for mining. And with this big national push for mining, or international push for critical minerals, we're seeing more of our parks at risk, more of the parks in Manitoba. And this isn't happening everywhere. Manitoba is one of the only jurisdictions where this is a problem.
And so I'm sure these places have a lot of biodiversity, a lot of different animals, a lot of things that make these places special and beautiful and blooming with life. And so, I know that working with you, that you broke the news about illegal mining claims in parks. What's the story about illegal mining claims?
Yeah, that's the bit about some parts of the park are supposed to be protected. And this most recent issue in September last year was, I found, it takes some investigation to understand where in a park damage is happening and which areas are supposed to be protected. So I find these new mining claims overlaid on an area that's supposed to be protected. It was set aside as caribou habitat decades ago, and it's also one of the most popular canoe routes. So I got in the car with the canoe and I drove up there, and then I hiked, and then I paddled. And on the Seagram Lake canoe route chain, I actually found the mining claim posts. They cut a tree down on the portage trail to make their mining claim posts. And this is absolutely an area that's protected. Mining is illegal. So we broke that story in the news. We want to put pressure on the mining companies to not do illegal things, but also, we're going into an election, and we want the new Manitoba government to know that we're watching, that we're going to make sure that they care for the parks that we have protected right now.
Yeah, and I saw that you brought up caribou, and from what I know, out here the caribou are very, almost endangered or whatnot. There's a lot of things affecting them. Is that the same with the caribou in Manitoba too? There's a lot of things that they're going through, right?
Yeah, they're really secretive. The boreal caribou found in the forest. Some of the scientists said every time we have a disturbance, like a road or a clear cut, they move 5 kilometers away from it. So it's really important that we leave areas set aside for caribou.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Huh?
In spring, we had a story about Grass River Provincial Park, and this is a brand new Manitoba government, our shiny new premier, and he it was at a mining conference, and he announced we're going to spend some money on mining companies doing exploration. And so I sent this data over to our mapper in Vancouver here, and I said, are these mining claims in a park? And comes back with a map, and he shows me, he's like, yeah, some of these are in a park. And I look at it in Grass River Provincial Park on the shores of Reed Lake, and I know that this area is critically important for caribou. That section of the park has been set aside from logging for decades. Like, it was always, this area was set aside, but now these mining claims are right on top of it. And I went to dig up the caribou data. Took a while to find it. It wasn't really available publicly, but I had been in a public meeting a decade ago, and I had the data. I had a photograph of the satellite imagery that shows where the caribou lived. I got our mapper to overlay that with the new claims, and so we broke this story about the brand new Manitoba government paying to go disrupt caribou habitat inside a provincial park. And it really resonated with people, because people love animals. People know caribou are endangered, then we have to act on it. Like, it's a federally protected species. It's illegal to disrupt their habitat, and the Manitoba government was paying a company to do it. And honestly, the Manitoba government was like, whoops, we've really screwed up here. But this tiny new government really needs to, we really need to see them do more than like, whoops, we screwed up. They need to start moving on parks and protected areas and caribou.
And I think that's like a big thing that, like, with all the campaigners I'm talking to here, it's like like even with Katie Shard, it's just like the government says they'll do things, but they're just not doing anything. And it's just like, we just want them to do something good, man. Protect what we love, right? And so one thing I know is that you're out here protecting what we love, right? And so I've got this spread in the Manitoba newspaper from the Free Press about your work last September. What can you tell me about this? Or this one right here?
Yeah, this was really amazing. Like, the media companies spending the time getting the photographer to come out to the park with us. That was really great. Showed a bunch of different areas, but it's because people it's a disconnect when they're like, what do you mean mining in a park? So this is the reason why the media comes out and covers it. And we're really grateful it was Narwhal and the Free Press put this together. And as we move forward, every one of these things raises attention. And after we broke some of these stories over the last few years, we paid for a professional poll to be done. And we said, they wrote a not a biased question and put it out into their polling system. And they said, do you support ending industrial activity in parks? Because we do a little bit of logging that we've been working on. And 70% of the people came back and said, yeah, we want to end industrial activity in parks. And the split was, it was both men and women, and it was both urban and rural. Like, these are the major splits that you usually see, but 70% of the people, like, that's a super majority. We don't see 70% of people vote for anything. Like, politics, 40% of the people vote, and that's enough to support, but 70%. Manitobans want to end industrial activity in parks. We need to get the Manitoba government to move on this.
Yeah, and so, like, how big is this? Like, how many parks and how many mining claims are out there? Because that's so important, right? And I know that there's so many rivers and lakes in Manitoba, which makes it such a special, unique place. Actually, I think it has some of the most lakes in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of water in those areas, and mining is always destructive. It's always dirty, and it causes water pollution, right? So some of the work we do on, like, the Bird River is keeping it from getting disrupted by mining contamination. There's 600, and I think this was as of June, there were 681 mining claims inside provincial parks. I think it's about a dozen provincial parks, and that covers almost 100,000 hectares. And yeah, mining claims, somebody going in and saying this chunk of a provincial park or this chunk of a First Nations territory is now mine to control by just staking up claims on the end of a post. The mining claim system is a problem in Manitoba, just like it is in Ontario and BC, like reforming these century-old ideas that we should allow people to go into the crown land or onto public forests and just claim private interests in them. That's part of the problem with park mining.
So they can do it that easy, it sounds like. Just like, easy, go in here, claim it. It doesn't matter what kind of animals are around, what endangered species are around, what are critical lakes or waters. They can just say, you know what, I want that for mining. So they can come in and do that, and then boom, it's theirs. And
they take that, and then suddenly they have control. Like, they've become a stakeholder instead of it being public land and or First Nations territory. So First Nations that I work with or come and contact me and ask me questions, and I give them the story, like, this is what I found on your territory. There's these mining claims in these regions, going through the, you know, the research systems that I have, and they weren't consulted. They don't have get any benefit from it. And like you said, there are areas that are important for water, for species, for culture, just for like places that they want to visit. And we're allowing whatever private individuals, private companies to come in and say, now I get to have a say in that.
Oh man, that's annoying.
It is annoying.
Yeah, it is,
that's
and
right.
it's like
Just
I do
breathe.
think we need that reform. You know, like
Yeah.
this is beautiful places. These are our homes that we're talking about. And so, you know, you're talking about like allying with First Nations people and some of my cousins. But, you know, I heard a story about Idle No More and Park Mining in Manitoba. And I know that you're part of this, right? And you're.
Yeah, I was there for in 2012 and 2013 when Idle More was the resurgence of in my view, a lot of this was because the federal government had changed the environmental laws, and First Nations were like, well, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. And so I was in these spaces, and my expertise is really about the colonial systems we used to manage. And so I'd share that data with First Nations. And in this instance, I shared the plan for a new mine, a copper mine in Grass River Provincial Park. And then the Matthias Colum Cree Nation was one of the communities, and the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. They were involved in this, and we worked on publicizing what Hudbay Mining was doing. But then as this is also getting publicized, the activists, the people were really fired up about this.
Mm-hmm.
They broke up a meeting that Hudbay was hosting, and the videos are online from that, breaking it up. But they were there to stand up for water and air. And so that piece where communities realized that one of the big risks was mining.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that in 2013, like things kind of calmed down, but we're in a place where critical minerals are being thrown about. It's like everything is about critical minerals. We have to do everything. And so First Nations communities are coming back to me and saying, tell me what this means for our community. And it all came out of those places where First Nations stood up, and those of us who were, working on these issues, then we began helping and ensuring that we could pass what we know to communities so they can stand up.
Huh. Yeah, I know, because it's like it's so destructive, right? And a lot of the times, you know, when I talk about environmental racism, they put industry right next to the reservations.
Yep.
Like one of my best friends who's lives up north from here, right? She's third generation who have to boil their water, right? And their reservation is right next to mining, right?
Yeah.
It's right next to mining, and it's just like, it just makes me so sad. And you know, our hair is so precious to us as like a native culture. She said, like, showering here compared to there, she could feel it in her hair and the skin. And that's just like, so that this is how bad it is, right? And this is how bad it's been, and how it's been for, once again, 3 generations, right? Her grandpa, who just passed away, went through this. And so I think you stated a little bit, you bring this data, and then, you know, you bring this data to these communities, and then what are the next steps after that? You know, like, how do we get rid of all this?
Yeah, knowing that these mining claims are going to come in, like getting a community resolution in a First Nation to say, like, we're going to stop mineral exploration in our territory. Red Sucker Lake worked on this. Poplar River First Nation worked on this. So there are communities who have that opportunity to move forward with it. There's when a community comes in, when an industry comes into your community, you sort of look around to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my work is knowing that it's happened to this community, and I could try and connect them to that community. But also the history of, like, we had this fight in the past. I know this is how it's going to look. I know what the government's going to do. And then, like, not all mining is bad. There's going to be places, there's going to be communities that say, we understand that out of our territory, there's 2%, there's a big gold deposit or critical mineral, nickel, whatever it is in our territory, and we want that mineral because the economic benefits have to come from somewhere, and we get that. So with the best regulations in place so that we don't damage our water, because again, mining is always a dirty, disruptive
Better
business,
regulations,
right? We properly care for this. We allow them to extract this, make sure that the community is getting a benefit of it, but then we ensure that other areas of our territory are permanently protected so that we don't have someone else coming in, oh, but we also want this piece and we also want this piece. So it's the same for a First Nations territory or a provincial park, which are of course, also First Nations territory, lines drawn on the map over top of it. If they find an ore body, in this case in Seguin First Nation territory, they're looking at lithium, which also happens to be right in Nopalming Provincial Park. Well, if they find an ore body and say that we're going to lose this area of the park, all industrial activity is nature sacrifice zones. Mm-hmm. We got to get it in our head that it's not just a benign industrial activity. We are sacrificing nature in that area. If we're going to sacrifice nature there, we're going to protect 3 times as much area. That 3-to-1 trade-off is used in wetlands. It's used all over the place. So we know how we can do this, but it requires very first ensuring that we do it right if we're going to do it. And then in some areas, we just shouldn't be looking for minerals. Like in some territories, I don't want mining companies coming into my traditional territory. If a First Nation says that, we have to honor that. And if Manitobans have already said we want to get mining out of our parks, we want industrial activity of our parks, we have to end mining claims in our provincial parks and then put a time limit on the claims that exist. Give them an idea to explain how this is going to be a benefit, how they're going to pull this off, how they're going to not have any environmental impact. But after 10 years, the claims are over and suddenly our parks are protected. And that's the global goal, is more protected areas, look after biodiversity, ensure nature is cared for, ensure water is cared for. So there's a path.
And better regulations from what I hear.
Better regulations. There's a path forward so that mining can happen, because we need metals for things, but we can't go the way we're going, and we know that there's enough people who want to see this change with us.
Yeah, and also keeping in consideration all the people who can get affected by it, right? Like, at least do it in a way where people can have fresh water.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Like we oftentimes allow the mining companies to say, hey, we think this is going to be fine, and there isn't enough pushback to say that isn't enough. We need better regulations.
Better care. And I like that. I like. Is there anything else you want to say so we can wrap up?
I think this is going to be a long conversation with the critical minerals, and more people are going to understand that we have to do better. And I see it happening, and I see it happening with First Nations communities having more say over what happens in their territories, and I think that's all going to be good for us as we move forward.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You know, because we'll work with our people on our lands, right? Like from the Tsleil-Waututh, and we, you know, just little things like that where we brought back caribou, right? We brought back caribou, and then with the caribou finally came, not caribou, sorry, elk, not caribou here. We brought back elk to our traditional territories, and then the wolves came, and then plants started to come. Right, so it's about rehabilitation, and so I think that's really important too, to bring all these people together to make change. Right, nations, allies, people who live here and who care about it. Like, this is our home. Let's make a better future. And on that bombshell, we're gonna wrap it up. If you want to get a hold of Eric, we'll have some of the links up here through WC. You know, follow us on our Instagram, our Facebook, all that stuff, right? And so, yeah, thank you. Welcome to this episode. And then now, bye.